think what we'll see is more and more services available here, enhanced services, and really growth. So you're going to see growth for Lebanon County, be it from our affiliation with Wellspan, or maybe some of the other health systems coming into town.
Yeah, some chemical going, we see Lancer General building on Cornwall Road, and of course Wellspan affiliated with Fulton as well. So there's a large consolidation movement going on that I think that we need to keep our...
There is, and I just want to say we need to make sure though that the people who need care aren't left behind, might not have the resources to pay for it, and that's unfortunately something that can happen down the line where some organizations are only taking people with insurance, or they're not accessible as much as we are the nonprofit. I believe we provided over $21 million in uncompensated care last year, which is a big part of what we do.
Thank you. Jeff, you have a 25-year career in land development here, right here in Lebanon Valley. I know Tom will want to jump in on this too. How have you seen things change in terms of how you bring a project out of the ground, the difficulties of that, and the opportunities of that over the course of your career?
When I first started the business and through the first 5 years in 1995, the regulations which might affect a bank branch opening up, or a Dollar General store like was spoken about earlier, they were about this thick, and you could do a plan for them, and it would take maybe 3 months to 4 months to get approved. It would cost an engineering fee of around $4,000. With the advent of computers and the social networking and the federal government becoming much larger, you now have local regulations, which might be this fall, covering maybe 6 to 7 different ordinances that they adopt. And then you've got the state and the federal regulations, which triple the size of the stack. Dollar General right now, same store for 1995, same footprint, would cost you around $40,000 in engineering fees. And it could take you, depending on who gets involved, 6 months to a year to get approved. We just landed Dollar General as a Pennsylvania client. They were so frustrated with their out-of-county consultants not getting plans approved quickly. They had some projects that took a year to a year and a half that they hired us and gave us 66-week contracts. So I have two men on that all the time. They're actually driving to the municipality, meeting with the public officials, getting to know them, getting their concerns, and then bringing those back and making sure that we address them in our application. That's what out-of-county engineers normally don't do, and that's what I had to learn to do in order to succeed here in Lebanon. In addition to the federal regulations, I just got an email yesterday from the County Conservation District. The northern long-eared bat was just added to the list of threatened and endangered species. So the list that started out at 287 critters back in the 70s is now approaching 2,000. And on any given project here in Lebanon County, we'll have to deal with special studies for the bog turtle and elk-toe mussel, the northern long-eared bat now, which I can tell you was a creature specifically targeted by the opponents to fracking, because those bats live in the forests of Pennsylvania, and they're going to make them do studies now, which are going to possibly impede the routes that they take, and they're going to delay their ability to do fracking. And that's been one of the challenges that I've observed. I'll say this, we heard prior two groups speak, they all use the word development, and in this room, presumably all friends of the Chamber of Business, developer is not an evil word. It never was an evil word, and it shouldn't be. But there is a whole contingent of our society that views developers as evil, and those who work for developers are evil. I've been targeted as being evil and their enemy. And when you go to these municipal meetings, like I told you I was at so many, they come out in force, small group, 5, 10, 20. They form their citizens group, and they raise opposition to a project, merely because they don't like it in their backyard, they don't want the view, they don't want the traffic in their neighborhood, or they have a higher moral standing that they want to save the planet. Well, that only adds frustration and cost. It causes the local government officials trouble, because they don't want to be viewed as not being considerate of the citizens with concerns. And then their planning commissions and sometimes some of the special groups that they've appointed in those municipalities they'll throw at you a whole bunch of new requirements that aren't written in the regulations or the ordinances, so really they're illegal. But you have to make a business decision if you're Bell Evans, me working for them, or the bank and me working for them. Are we going to try to appease these people to keep our public relations good, or are we going to fight? So when you choose to fight, you bring in a lawyer, and then of course everybody's upset because now the solicitor's got to get involved. There's a waste of money. So most of the time they try to appease the people. I've learned it doesn't work. You've got to roll up your sleeve and get down in the ditches, and you've got to fight. Projects, and we've been successful because of that. We identify the concerns ahead of time. We meet with the client, tell them this is who we know is going to be opposed. I told you I was born and raised here. I have relatives all over the county. I got friends in all the different municipalities and school districts. So I know who's not happy about something before it even ever hits the newspaper. So we get together and we strategize as to what to do. We thought we had it covered with the Springwood people. Tom Siegel, the accountant, was one of the minor partners of Springwood, and he had got wind that there were going to be these opponents of it, and we were too late. They organized quickly. You might recall the concerned citizens of Lebanon County opposing Walmart. Well, they were against Springwood. They got to be so big with over 200 people donating money. They hired a special attorney out of Lancaster. They got Ralph Heister elected. Ralph's a great guy, environment teacher and an administrator in the schools. He got to be a supervisor. They still didn't have the majority, and then 2 years later, Kip Kelly got to be a supervisor. And now you had the NIMBYs and the environmentalists in charge, and they ditched all the regulations in North Cornwall, brought in a specialist from Lancaster who wrote a 400-page ordinance, which at every page that you turned was, we don't want development at all. And until you went through the quagmire, going to all the different tables and charts, you quickly realized it would be almost impossible to do many projects. Tom can speak more to this, but they had a prolonged legal fight, I think, for 3 or 4 years in Judge Tillwalk's court, where Judge Tillwalk finally told North Cornwall, you must approve Springwood, and you must allow the old zoning that was in place to be used, and you shall approve their plans, and you should do so promptly. That's what it took for Springwood. I don't know, Tom can tell you, they've got hundreds and hundreds, if not millions of dollars invested just to get to the approval phase. So that's the kind of stuff, the kind of frustration that I see as a consulting engineer working for business and developers who want to expand, who want to provide growth, who want to provide jobs and enhance the tax base, and it's becoming more difficult and more difficult. I will say that social media, Facebook, Twitter, email, the internet has now spawned so many, such a quick, rampant spread of false information, things that they come to meetings all loaded for bear. You're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do this. Well, no, we're not. That's not at all what this project's about. Well, that's what I read. And so you waste an hour in the municipality's meeting talking about things that aren't even issues. And that's become a real problem. I can only say that in my old age, 57, that I'm really glad to be getting out of this business because I would not wish this on my children.
It's going to be tough to follow.
Maybe you'd like to be politically correct.
I'm going to be a little more politically correct. I still have to get some permits in North Cornwall Township.
The judge will take care of it.
Jeff's absolutely right. Springwood was the victim of something that really happens quite a lot in Pennsylvania, and that is small groups that can get into one of the powers of position in one of the 2,480 some odd separate municipal entities in our Commonwealth. Each one of those entities has its own planning commission, its own board, be it supervisor, city council, what have you. And small interest groups that may not represent the majority of the opinion in that particular municipal entity may get in a position of power, as they did in North Cornwall, which Jeff just described, and take commercial zoning and overnight change it to agricultural, and then write a new ordinance under which something might take place. Springwood spent close to 6 years actually in litigation and many millions of dollars. That's through, we did get a court-ordered settlement that's a couple of inches thick that allows us to build exactly what we're going to build, but it took us that long to get there. And just to echo what Jeff said years ago when I first got in this business in Pennsylvania, we could do a project in typically 3 to 4 months. Today, when I left Cedar Realty Trust as the president of development and construction, we always put in a 2-year time frame, even for the smallest development, be it a giant acre shopping center or a Rite Aid or what have you. It's just gotten that difficult with not just the municipality, but also all the third-party permits from DEP to PennDOT and to the County Conservation District. That being said, and this gets to one of the things that you wanted us to discuss today, how can we better position our area for economic development? If you go to the 2,480 separate municipalities, each with their own little fiefdom, their planning commission, whatever. The positive side of that is that you really do control the quality of life, and this is direct say the quality of life in that municipality. The negative side of that is what I just described. You don't have that situation in other states. Cedar Realty Trust covered 7 states, and in places like Maryland, Virginia, and parts of New York State, you have county-wide, area-wide zoning and economic development that's coordinated with transportation systems on a much larger scale geographically, and therefore the rules are set and the rules don't change. A developer, of which I'm proud to say I am, doesn't mind adhering to the rules of the municipality. The only time you have trouble in a municipality is when the rules are thrown out the window, as Jeff described, and there are no rules. Then your only recourse as a developer is to a court of law. And no developer wants to go there because the only people that win in a court of law are your attorneys. And the municipality loses as well, paying legal fees. So I think that's one of the inhibitors to economic development that's inherent and sort of basic to Pennsylvania. How do you solve that? Well, that's a much bigger issue. The other thing that we have difficulty with from a development point of view are transportation improvements, and our dear friends at PennDOT, who I know quite well and have done many projects with. They're getting much better. The last couple of secretaries of transportation, I think, have brought a different level of professionalism to that department, and we're seeing it a little easier to deal with them, a little quicker to get answers, and getting some people to actually take responsibility for decisions. But as far as the industry goes, from a development and economic development point of view, it's difficult, it's gotten more difficult, it's getting more difficult, and you really do have to roll up your sleeves, figure on twice the amount of time and twice the cost to get through to the point where Springwood is now, 10 years later, where we're actually doing some physical work. And I want to point something out about how our development has impacted some of the other folks here. The new cancer center that was described earlier couldn't hook up and open up and become operational without Springwood expanding the sanitary conveyance system in North Cornwall Township. There's a 60,000 square foot, I believe it's an orthopedic center that's going to employ a lot of people that's going into North Cornwall Township. That center cannot open and get a certificate of occupancy until Springwood finishes the expansion of that same conveyance system and dramatically increases the amount of sanitary capacity in North Cornwall. So it's all an interrelated thing. So our development is going to benefit those 2 projects. In addition, the Expo Center, which is on a septic system, has expanded to their limit by DEP reg for that septic system. They're now going to be able to hook up to the sanitary system because of what Springwood's doing. So there are 3 entities just in the neighborhood off the top of my head that are going to benefit from a $500,000 sanitary sewer conveyance system expansion we just undertook. So it's not always just the developer who's benefiting from the approvals, but also the neighborhood.
That's
I'd
really,
like to make a comment, even in another additional benefit from development and expansion. Without it, recruiting people to this area to fill the jobs that are needed is very difficult. More and more you're getting couples who are coming in who have 2 career people. Or the spouse says to the other spouse, well, where's the nearest Target? They don't want to drive 25 miles to go to good things about it, how the schools are great and everyone's so nice, but where do you shop? And, you know, where's that convenience? I work, I don't have time to drive 25 minutes to half an hour to go up to Target in Harrisburg. So if we don't continue to develop and meet those needs of people, there's not going to be the employees to fill the jobs that we're trying to bring to the area.
One other thing, the Expo Center has been one of the biggest proponents of our project, because when exhibitors come to whatever show they come to at the center, they have to go to Hershey, or they have to go to Reading to get a hotel room, or to go to a restaurant. They're very limited in their choices in the Lebanon area. So we're going to build a 100-room hotel right across the street from the Expo Center, and also some restaurant pads. Now, does that benefit the developer? Sure, we're in business to make money. Every developer I know is, or they've got more money than brains. But it has a trickle-down effect and an economic development effect on the entire neighborhood and all the other uses.
The effect that the two of you described, meaning Tom and Jeff, of just proliferation of hurdles that we need to go through, the amount of time that it takes to bring a development out of the ground. That's a battle, if you will, that the two of you are fighting on the ground. Is there something that the larger business community can be doing to advocate? Because when we hear you speak, Tom, about something like the sewer benefits, that's something the average person would know nothing about, would have little ability to understand, would have little attraction maybe to the larger media, and yet here's a group of us, maybe 50, 100 people, hearing that, understanding the benefit of that. How do we advocate on a broader basis for broad-based economic development that benefits Lebanon?
Let me just add one other thing that Springwood will be undertaking, and that is almost $12 million in off-site transportation improvements. We have to do those as a prerequisite to our approval from Cornwall Township as well as PennDOT. But nonetheless, all the area businesses are going to benefit from a much expanded transportation system. I heard on the radio yesterday there was an accident in Cornwall and Rockery. Well, that's the first intersection we're going to dramatically expand and improve. So it's not just sewer capacities, but it's also transportation network that very often gets improved with development.
I would say that it's how people vote. We need officials pass laws that are respectful of the Constitution and personal property rights, and not all create special interests who want all these environmental regulations put in place. And I don't think that's going to happen.
I think also, much to your chagrin, Jeff, utilizing social media and the other marketing avenues to fight the bad messages out there is important, even though we're not necessarily dealing with it from a development perspective. We deal with that every day in our business with commodity producers wanting to enter this rapidly growing niche market. And unless you can be as fast as they are in their communication, you do get left behind, and you create for yourself a much larger battle than what you started with.
Quick response from each of you. What's great about doing business in the Lebanon Valley?
I'll start because I do a lot of recruiting for the hospital, and what I hear is they really enjoy the cost of living, the people, how nice they are, the lack of needing to commute. Have you ever done that in your life? I have. I used to drive between 1 and 2 hours to go 30 miles. It really does eat into your day as well as your personal life. So there are a lot of positive things. The schools, the beauty, it's beautiful. And we were driving somewhere the other morning, and the person I was driving with said, you forget how beautiful it is because of the winter that we just had, but it really is. I just got back from Florida at Easter time. I came back and I thought, wow, Florida's really flat and ugly. Pennsylvania is beautiful. So it does have a lot to offer here.
Beautiful. What else? Thank you, Ken. Terrific. Pick it off.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo. I think that we live in a desirable community. We do have an affordable, cost of living here. We have a lot of green open space. We have rails for trails. I live a half a mile from the
Just for
So,
Kristen.
I'm just gonna make
That's
it,
great.
I'm thrilled. So, I mean, I think it's a great place to live. But it also, and I was sharing this with Jeff over lunch, I have to recruit folks to the Lebanon division, and I'm at the bank, this is my 26th year, and that's a problem in banking. A lot of us are aging, and we're trying to attract some young blood who doesn't mind dealing with the regulatory and compliance environment that we now all live in. But I was talking to a young man who happened to go to Lebanon Valley College, and talking to him about coming and starting a career with the bank here in Lebanon. And he was sharing our conversation with some of his friends, and he came back to me and he said, he's saying, where would you leave Lancaster and go to Lebanon? And because there's just a lack at that age, and I think it's an age point. Some of the young folks don't see some of the great things that we do offer here. So I think it is trying to develop, build, and have some of the things that come with development, some of the amenities that we can offer to people, so they not only grow up and stay here, but we can also attract people from that side of the area to work here. I think there's a number of employers, and a lot of them are sitting here at this table that offer an above average wage and salary and benefits to employees, but we need to provide a community in which they want to come and live. I would also echo, and a couple of people have talked about this, I personally haven't grown up and lived here all my life. I think we live in a phenomenal area because we have tremendous access to get to New York City, to get to Baltimore, to get to Philadelphia. We live so close to so many cultural centers that are really an easy drive to get to. So I think it's a matter of perspective that people have. And I think people's perspective in this community is in part some of the challenge in and of itself. At the bank right now, we're going through what we call change management because we've figured out that the status quo is not a recipe for success. So you have to accept and embrace change, compliance and regulations. None of that is going away in the near term. So instead of fighting it, we have to learn to adapt and move forward with that kind of the new normal. It is a new normal, and I think more people in our community, once they have a taste and see what some of this development can really bring, I hope that they have a fresh perspective and approach future developments with a more open mind than we approach them in the past.
That's terrific encouragement. Jeff, or what would you add to what's great about doing business here?
I definitely think at the core of Lebanon County and the surrounding areas is there's such a phenomenal work ethic, and it creates for some really great employees and creating some longevity in employees. Even with the changing demographics that we're seeing, that the new demographic also has some pretty good work ethics as well. And it will be one of our challenges as we continue to expand in Lebanon County to be able to recruit and get more. We're almost going to be doubling our workforce over the next 3 to 5 years. And it definitely is one of our concerns to be able to source enough employees that want to work in a chicken processing facility. It's not the most glamorous job in the world, but we do pay well. We do have great benefit packages, and being able to capture that hardworking group of people who live in our area is very important. And all of the other comments were definitely spot on as well.
I would offer, I did tell you about a horror story, and I talked about how difficult things have become. Lebanon County is still a better place to do business in what I do than surrounding counties. And it's certainly better than if you want to get anywhere near Philadelphia or go down into Chester County. civil engineering side, Lebanon County has excellent infrastructure. From a civil engineering standpoint, we've got great roads and bridges. There's 309 bridges, and most of them are in good condition. Traffic control is good. The signage is good. People get around very well. And it's easy to lose your perspective. It's not like it was back when I was in high school. You can't do any work quickly like you used to be able to. But go to Lancaster and live there for a week or drive that traffic and then come back home and you say, I don't want to go there. We have close access to many small airports, Regal, DEC. We've got Farmers Pride Airport. We've got HIA for more regional travel, and then we've got Philadelphia International involvement, PWI are close. Water and sewer systems in Lebanon County are excellent. The City of Lebanon Authority and John Deere has done an outstanding job. They completed expansion of their sewage plant. There's plenty of capacity for immediate growth. If you want to bring in a major food processor like Kellogg's cereal manufacturer that might use 800,000 gallons of water a day, I don't think that's going to happen. They're going to have to invest a lot of money to find another water source because Lebanon couldn't handle it. But most businesses can. Fredericksburg Sewer and Water Authority, who I work for, we're doing business with Ellen Evans, and they're working collaboratively to get more water and sewer capacity because they're going to need over 1 million gallons out there. And Fredericksburg's expressed a willingness to do that for them. UGI is a great utility to work with. I will say this to any businesses wanting to locate, start your electrical planning early. Med-Ed has been a bit of a problem. It's not the local people's fault at all. They're wonderful people. First Energy, the Ohio Corporation, just cut staff, and some projects you can't get electric service for a year. So you need to get in their pipeline early if you want to make sure that you have electric to open up. You're dealing with that. They've had to make $450,000 of electrical improvements out in Fredericksburg to get it to the new Expo Center. And besides the infrastructure being generally good, land is reasonably priced. You can buy ag land for $10,000 an acre. Our residential low density is in 20 to 30,000 an acre. Medium density residential 25 to 50. Commercial can be 40 to 100,000 unless you have a prime spot, maybe in a corner with the signal might be 250 to 500,000 an acre. Housing prices are very reasonable, $70 to $150 a square foot. If you watch HGTV and some of those houses in renovated San Francisco or Boston, New York markets, they're up in the $400, $500 a square foot range. And Susan talked about it earlier, as did one of the other speakers. County Planning Department is excellent to work with. They administer the government of 16 or 17 municipalities of the 26 in the county. The city is also excellent to work with. Sherry and the staff are very eager for growth. So they don't put impediments in your place. It's the remaining municipalities that don't use the county or the city. They can give you a little trouble, and as long as you have your finger on the pulse, you can address those things, and you can get a plan done in 3 to 6 months. It won't always be like Springwood or Walmart work. You just have to know what you're doing, and you have to plan ahead well.
I think that we're a prime example of that. And definitely, as I stated before, developing and establishing and maintaining those relationships with the local governments governmental bodies is so important. And obviously having folks on our side like Jeff and the other developer that we're working with have really been key to our success.
Thank you. We have time for a question or two, and there's got to be